Right. Narrative of a Pickpocket. A 10-year-old boy called Dick leaves home, his parents and his siblings, in the countryside of England to go to London. After a short time in London, he had spent all of his money on lodging and food. Hereafter, he joins a little boys' group of pickpockets. The boys steal handkerchiefs from gentlemen who has just gotten off ships. The boys sell the handkerchiefs to a man called Larry. Larry buys the handkerchiefs very low priced, and he can see that Dick is a very talented and hard-working pickpocket. Then one day Dick is imprisoned for theft. He spends 2 months in Westminster Bridewell. The day of his release, there are 2 men waiting for him with a taxicab in front of the prison gates. The 2 men took him in to live with them and the women they were living with, presumably their wives. One of the women, called Emily, washed and cleansed Dick. They gave him some nice clothes and a job as a pickpocket, only now he had to steal from women's pockets. Dick and the 2 men made a lot of money until one day when Dick was caught stealing and went to prison for 3 months at Bridge Street, Bridewell, Blackfriars, also called by the thieves the Old House. These things happen because Dick does not know how to provide for himself in a big city like London. All he has ever seen is how his father has been working at home, and those abilities are not of any use in the city. Besides, Dick does not want to write to his parents and ask them for money to go home. He knows they would do so in a minute had he asked. And I've got a quote. I sometimes was almost tempted to write to them and let them know the position I was in, as I knew they would gladly send me up money to return home, but my stubborn spirit was not broken then. Page 2, line 11 to 14. The text takes place in a variety of places in London. First, Dick was at a coffee shop in Mile End Road. He was there for 7 weeks, until he almost ran out of money. Then he went to a lodging house at Field Lane, Holborn. After he has gone completely broke, he was kicked out, and then the little boys group who sleep in the dark arches of the Adelphi. Page 2, line 19 to 20. This was where his pickpocket adventure began. Then he went to prison for theft at Westminster Bridewell. After that, he was taken on by 2 men, and they lived in Flower and Dean Street, Brick Lane, Whitechapel. Finally, Dick was once again imprisoned for theft, but this time he was sent to Bridge Street, Bridewell, Blackfriars, also called the Old House. Characters of this story is obviously Dick, the narrator. He leaves home at the age of 10 to go to London. And then there is the father and Larry, the man who buys the handkerchiefs from the boys very cheap. Also the man who brings them. He's also the man who brings the 2 men to Dick. Then there is Joe Mockrow, the boy in the little gang who teaches Dick how to steal handkerchiefs. And then there are the other boys. And then Emily, presumably the wife of one of the 2 men. She takes care of Dick and helps him learn how to steal from women's pockets. And then we've got the 2 men. They take Dick in and teach him how to steal and how to steal with a good profit. In the story, we get a short introduction as to why Dick moved to London. He was quite bad-tempered, and one day he had said that he wanted to burn the whole house down. Then his father had beaten him up severely, and then Dick left for London. got another quote. After several times spoken to by my father about my quarrelsome disposition with my brothers and sister, I threatened, young as I was, to burn the house down the first opportunity I got. This threat, though not uttered in my father's ears, came to his ear, and he gave me a severe beating for it, the first time he ever corrected me. This was in the summer of 1840, in the end of May. I determined to leave home and took nothing but what belonged to me. Page 1, line 128. The initial situation of the story is that Dick is forced to make a thief of himself to provide for himself. But not at any time does he seem to think stealing is wrong. Not at any time does he think twice about his doings. In the end, Dick gets arrested and imprisoned for the second time. The ending of the text is very open and indicates that there are more to this story than written in this piece. Quote, I was sentenced to 3 months' imprisonment in Bridge Street, Bridewell, Blackfriars, termed by the thieves the Old House. Page 7, line 8 to 10. It is expected that Dick will keep on stealing. He was given a lot of tricks from the 2 men, and he was a talented pickpocket. The narrator of this text, obviously Dick, is a first-person narrator. It's Dick himself who tells his story, and since it is his own story, the narrator is also quite reliable. The narrator, Dick, does not at any moment in the text let us know what he feels or what he thinks. He only talks about the events. The characters are described indirectly by the author. For example, Larry. The author does not write that he is quite a nasty man. We must read that between the lines. Quote, there we used to meet a man my companions called Larry. I knew him by no other name for the time. He used to give almost what price he liked for the handkerchiefs. If they refused to give them at the price he named, he would threaten them in several ways. He said he would get the other boys to drive them away and not allow them to get any more handkerchiefs there. If this did not intimidate them, he would threaten to give them in charge, so that at least they were compelled to take whatever price he liked to give them. Page 2, line 29 to page 3, line 3. This indicates that the author wants to be the judge of how the characters are. The theme of this text could be orphans. Dick ends up in London with a bunch of other boys who does not appear to have any parents or caretakers either. They must manage on their own. The language of this text is very simple. The effect of the language being simple is that it's quite easily read. The title of this text is Narrative of a Pickpocket. Therefore, it does not come as a surprise to the reader that it's a pickpocket who tells his story. Like Dick. If to compare this text, Narrative of a Pickpocket, to any other texts, I would relate it to Cry of the Children. Since both stories are about children, they both share a story about children having to go through water and fire and whatever to be able to provide for themselves, and in Cry of the Children's case, their families. So, yeah.